Nobel Prize-winning scientist Dan Kamen reveals the technology that could transform our cities and usher in a brighter future. This episode, Buildings.
The energy demands of our buildings are simply unsustainable. If we can't find ways to make them cleaner, we commit ourselves to a warming future.
This is one of the strangest materials known to science. It helped a spacecraft survive a frozen hell on the surface of Mars. This man thinks it can transform our buildings and maybe transform the future of planet Earth. 2050. Ecopolis is booming. New buildings are rising everywhere, burning energy by the second. This demand for power pushes up greenhouse gases and pollution. 40% of a building's energy consumption is used for heating and cooling. But a staggering 1/3 of that simply disappears into thin air. Construction expert Don Young wants us to see our city's buildings through new eyes. He thinks if we could see energy as we waste it, we'd take action in a flash.
If people could see the world through these infrared eyes, the amount of sensitivity to these issues would skyrocket.
The yellow and red parts of the image show where most of the heat is escaping.
It's just phenomenal. I'm in this business, and I'm amazed at the amount of energy being emitted.
It shows there's a towering inferno raging through our cities.
I mean, these buildings look like they're on fire, really.
The problem is poor insulation. Buildings alone waste 13% of global energy production. That's equal to nearly 4 billion barrels of oil a year. We're building entire power stations just to heat up the sky. It's an unbelievable waste. But Don Young wants to reinvent our buildings. He's racing against rival companies to develop an astonishing material to keep heat exactly where we want it, on the inside. There is one place where extreme insulation is essential: the frozen wastes of space. And if this insulation can work in space, it might be the answer down here on Earth. Don Young discovered that NASA spent 2 decades investigating new kinds of insulation. They developed one of the most exotic and beautiful substances known to man. This astonishing material is called aerogel. Technically a solid, aerogel looks more like a trick of the light.
People refer to it as frozen smoke, and in some sense it is. It seems to be there just for the moment.
An incredible 99% of aerogel is nothing but air. It lets light through, but it won't conduct heat. This amazing property arises from its unique structure. Aerogel is made from a jelly-like substance, part liquid, part solid. The solids are fine chains of silica, surrounded by alcohol. To dry the gel, the alcohol is replaced with liquid CO2 under high pressure. As the pressure drops, the liquid CO2 becomes a gas. It bubbles away and leaves behind tiny air-filled pockets that are 1,000 times thinner than a spider's web. This elaborate honeycomb of air blocks heat instantly. In the 1990s, NASA put aerogel to the test in one of the most extreme environments in the solar system: the frozen landscape of Mars. On the red planet's surface, temperatures can plummet to -100 degrees Fahrenheit. Far too punishing for the sensitive equipment inside NASA's robotic probes. So NASA began encasing the electronics on Martian explorers in aerogel. If this advanced insulator failed, it would be a multi-million-dollar disaster. But aerogel delivered the goods. The Martian explorers beamed back stunning images and survived 3 frigid months. Don Young knows aerogel is the best insulator ever invented. But there are big problems with applying the space-age material in an urban environment. Aerogel is expensive and very, very fragile.
The main problem with the laboratory aerogel that had been around for quite some time is its fragility. It is easy to crush.
One squeeze, and aerogel explodes in a shower of dust.
It is easy to break and just very hard to imagine using it in any type of industrial setting.
Young's company spent 7 years making aerogel tough enough to use in buildings. Their solution is simple but brilliant. The wet gel goes around a blanket of polyester fiber. This blanket provides a skeleton for the material, making it strong and surprisingly flexible. The finished product still has aerogel's incredible insulating properties, at a fraction of the cost of the material sent to the Red Planet. This is dry ice at minus 109 degrees Fahrenheit, as cold as the surface of Mars.
When I put my hand on this ice, I suffer almost immediate frostbite. Insulate that with 3 millimeters of our aerogel material. I can put my hand on this indefinitely for the day, if necessary.
If aerogel can block the cold, it should be just as efficient at keeping heat in. Young's betting his right arm on that. 3 millimeters, or 1/8 of an inch of aerogel blanket, stops a flame roaring at more than 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
We've been able to maintain all the magical properties, all the thermal properties that make the aerogel so important. Now we're in the midst of introducing the material into the building and construction industry.
Young's aerogel blanket is incredibly effective at insulating walls and roofs. But 30% of the heat lost from a building goes straight out of its windows. So Young is experimenting with see-through aerogel.
The holy grail of aerogel would be to one day be able to make an aerogel that could be transparent enough and strong enough to provide insulation within the window structure itself.
To plug the last gaps in our leaky buildings, Young believes we need aerogel window panes. So far, these high-tech windows are too fragile. Vibrations from a passing truck could be enough to shatter them. But Young is confident scientists will crack this problem. If they succeed, it could have a real impact on Ecopolis. The city's buildings kept hot or cool for a fraction of today's energy cost. Don Young is convinced that aerogel's glory days are coming.
I think that we will have aerogel in every building. Aerogel will be as common in 2050 as materials like plastic are today.
Aerogel insulation, a very futuristic idea. But is it the best weapon for the war on carbon emissions? Top scientist Dan Kamen has the final say. He will decide if aerogel can crush Ecopolis's carbon footprint. The Center for Alternative Technology crunches the numbers, providing data for each technology's impact on Ecopolis's carbon footprint. This weird futuristic material scores an amazing 29% reduction in emissions. Maybe it could alter the future of Ecopolis.